Welcome to the group chat on Two-Way, where the ethos is peace, love, and understanding, and the presumption of grace for all. I am Batya, and I am joined by my phenomenal co-hosts, Nina Turner, who is a progressive, Dan Turrentine, a moderate Democrat, Emma Jo Morris, a conservative, and Robbie Suave, a libertarian. Welcome to the Two-Way viewers who have joined us on the Two-Way app. We're very excited to have you all with us. A brief note on the chat. You guys were so nice last week, both in the chat and in the comments on YouTube. I am so unbelievably grateful. I got so much nachas, which is Jewish for pleasure and pride out of that. And I have to say, Mark Halperin has been an amazing mentor to me and many other young journalists. So I was surprised to find a surge of competitive satisfaction, shall we say, to hear him beg for no smack in the chat and never be listened to. And I was listened to. So let's keep it going. Nicest chat, not just on Two-Way, but on the internet. I'm so grateful to all of you. And also, of course, we're going to be taking your calls and your commentary. You can get involved in the conversation, a conversation like no other. Raise your hand if you want in on the conversation. We are especially hoping to get some Democrats and progressives joining us in the conversation this week. So please, if that is you, join us. All right, our first topic today. Protests, riots in LA. A series of ICE raids in Los Angeles resulted in mass protests across the city, which turned violent 5 nights in a row. After the first day of violence, President Trump mobilized the National Guard against the objections of LA's Mayor Karen Bass, and California Governor Gavin Newsom, even though the Los Angeles police chief said that he and his team were overwhelmed. Newsom and Bass then went on to blame the rest of the week's violence on Trump's response, saying that basically by mobilizing the National Guard, and he then sent in some Marines to protect law enforcement, he had engulfed the situation in flames, inflamed it further, basically egged on the protesters, made them turn violent. So the protests are now spreading. Let's have element one. You can see here a map of where there are now more protests planned, spreading across the country. Although I have to say they do seem to be much smaller. Certainly, we're not seeing anything like the galvanization around Black Lives Matter. And even in LA, it does seem to be calming down, thankfully. So Sam will roll some footage throughout as we talk. This will be element two and three, both of the peaceful protests, which was a lot of the protests were peaceful, but also of the rioting and where it got out of hand. So the crux of the issue is really twofold. I think the first big question is how much executive power was appropriate here? Was it correct and right for Donald Trump to mobilize the National Guard against the objections of Gavin Newsom? And then I think the second question that really was raised by all of this is how extensive should Trump's deportation program be? Should it be limited to violent criminals? Now, bear in mind that polling suggests that a majority, a slim majority, but a majority nonetheless, of Americans keep telling pollsters that they think that every illegal migrant should be deported. And Trump, of course, being Trump, has tweeted actually in both directions, and we can talk about those tweets a little bit later.
Just today,
Just today, indeed. Indeed, Dan. Just today, he tweeted both sides of this issue. Okay, so let's start like this. To my co-hosts, I'm going to ask three questions. Let's do a show of hands. Should Trump only be deporting illegal migrants who have committed crimes? Raise your hand if you think the answer to that is yes. Wow,
I kind
only
of,
Robbie.
kind of. I'm going to go half a hand here. Yes.
Okay, so meaning that Emma, Joe, and Nina, you guys think he should also, there are people who go beyond just criminals who he should be deporting?
No, I
Should,
don't.
Yes, obviously.
I don't think that. But go ahead, Emma Joe. I don't think that.
Okay,
I
so
didn't.
If you
Nina,
enter the country
Nina, you
illegally,
think
you
it
don't have the right to be here and need to be
wait, okay.
removed.
Nina, you think it should be limited to, oh no, but Nina, you think probably so you mean he should be deporting nobody?
No, I don't mean that either. I mean that people should have due process. I can't
Should
answer
have due
that
process.
question
Okay,
just by
okay,
raising my
okay.
hand.
It's too simple. Okay, got it.
It's
Let's do a show of hands, and then we'll get into the details. Who thinks he was correct to mobilize the National Guard? Was Trump right to mobilize the National Guard? Raise your hand. Okay, so we have
Robbie's
Dan
the other
and
half of
Emma
my
Joe.
hand.
See, this is, by the way, what's amazing about this show is like I could not have predicted who would have agreed with who on those questions. And I think that it's so great that that keeps shuffling. There's never like a consistency on that. Sorry to brag about how amazing this show is. All right. Okay, so I want to toss to Emma Joe and then to Nina, but first I want to share a little backstory just to frame this part of the question. So, um, one of the things I keep thinking about is the Black Lives Matter protests and how this is, to me, seems like significantly different. And it's different quantitatively in that those protests really seem to grow and grow, and these really seem to be shrinking and shrinking. But I think it's also different qualitatively because to me, the BLM protests were predicated on an idea of what we share as Americans. Now, a lot of people didn't support the protests, they didn't support the way they went about them, but the fundamental idea there that everybody, including Black Americans, should have the same rights as Americans is something I think like 99% of Americans agree on. And that led to a lot of the mass support of those protests. These, I think, are sort of very different. And it's not just because, some of them are violent, some of them are not, but because they do seem to be losing support. And I think that they have much less of the feel of galvanizing the nation around this idea of protecting illegal immigrants. And to me, it just like, I just sometimes feel like the civil rights feeling that I think is a very mainstream one is constantly like being in a way co-opted by other less, in my mind, less deserving causes. Whether it's trans rights or Gaza or illegal migrants, like we're always expected to have what I think is a very righteous outrage about how some of our fellow citizens are treated for it's always other causes. That's kind of why I think this is that's how I'm thinking about it. Emma Joe, am I right or am I wrong to be contrasting those things? And then Nina, let's hear you jump in.
I have a totally different recollection of the Black Lives Matter thing, especially in 2020, which I think was when it really kind of came to a head and then sort of disappeared after. I have a completely different recollection of that. That was not a civil rights protest. I don't think that that was the impression of it by a significant portion of the country. Not only was it not a civil rights protest in the way that you imagine, like sit-ins or like these like really moving things that happened in the past, but it absolutely destroyed Black neighborhoods specifically the most. People were left stranded with no local businesses, no cars in some cases, because everything had been destroyed all around them. And there was all this viral footage of people in desperation pleading at news cameras who were racial minorities seething and grieving about the damage that had been done in their name or something. Aside from the fact that the greater population who weren't in those affected areas but were just watching this go down, if you remember, there was this weird thing going on in the news where they were gaslighting us to say mostly peaceful protest while the newscaster is standing behind a burning gas station. The country was freaked out. And when Trump didn't intervene in that, because he was bullied by the media doing this Orwellian thing where they show you something that is the exact opposite of what they are actually saying, he was bullied by the media. He was in a weird spot because of COVID. He was in a weird spot because of the lockdowns and the whole environment and the emotional environment and political environment at the time. He did not intervene in the way that I think was appropriate. Maybe he did do some protections in Washington, but that's it. And things went sour. Things went sour and people were very upset. And even Democrats were hitting him for not being in favor of law and order.
Okay,
Whereas
so Emma
right
Jo, what
now, his
you're
approval
saying,
rating today hit a 4-month high.
so you're saying basically, like back then, that these cases are similar, except in how Trump responded. Then he sort
Yes,
of failed to respond adequately. He learned from that and responded adequately in this situation. Nina.
exactly. People don't like when rioters are allowed to burn cities down. So him intervening makes him look good. And this is absolutely comparable to Black Lives Matter. And it's more neither were about civil rights and neither were noble.
All right, Nina.
Ooh, Black Jesus with the sandals on, help me today.
Come for me.
I need Black Jesus with the sandals on. First of all, the Black Lives Matter movement was about civil rights. It may not have displayed itself in the traditional way of the 20th century, but it was very much about that. America saw footage of a police officer lynching a black man with his knee. And black people rose up. It was the largest mass movement of this century. And allies rose up to utilize their First Amendment right to say that this is wrong. And not only is this wrong, this is also connected to the collective history and experiences of Black Americans who are descendants of enslaved people. Now, I don't believe that what is happening today is exactly similar, Bacha. I would not compare these two things at all. Not they might have some let me back up. They might have some similarities, but they're not exactly the same. Now, while nobody wants to see their communities burned down, that is a fact. That's just human nature. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who's not the only one we can quote, but he is the one that is quoted the most often, once said that riots are the language of the unheard, meaning that by the time everyday people start to be amped up to that effect, something has gone entirely wrong. Now, is it right to burn down somebody's property or put your hands on somebody? Absolutely not. We got laws for that. So let me get back to this president. President Donald J. Trump is putting gasoline on the fire. If he wanted to do this decently, and the reason why, the Constitution is the law of the land, the last time I checked. And the Constitution of the United States of America protects everybody as the law of the land who's on American soil. If the president wanted to really do what he said he was going to do, which was to first get rid of the worst of the worst, he's not doing that right now. And there's evidence out there that he's snatching up everybody. There's just a headline right now. Trump vows changes to immigration crackdown to protect migrant farmers and hotel workers. Well, I wonder why. And I wonder if they're going to check to see if those hotel migrants workers or the farmer workers are here legally. No, he's not going to do that. So he's putting
Yeah,
some
I mean, he
qualifiers on
was
that.
very clear in a press conference today that he specifically aims to protect illegal farm workers and hotel workers.
Exactly.
Well,
See,
because the farm
that
workers
part.
complained.
Right,
But
right.
one more point. If the president wanted to do this decently in order, then he should have picked up the phone and called Governor Newsom. Then Governor Newsom could have had a conversation with the mayor and they could have engaged in this together. But the president is putting gasoline on the fire, and it is really unconscionable how he's handling this. It's sad.
Dan, I imagine you're not a big fan of how Trump handles things, but you have been very compellingly making the case all week that this is a disaster for Democrats. So walk us through how you see it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree and I disagree a little bit with Nina in that I think the protest started because a local assemblyman saw ICE gathering at an ICE facility. And he's pulled over on the road, took out his cell phone and went live on Instagram to warn community members, ICE is in our neighborhood. And the community members kind of came out in broad protest. As you said, Batya, on Sunday night, the LAPD, it felt like was losing control of the scene and said, we are having trouble to get this under control. And the mayor and the governor were saying, we are not going to help ICE with their job of immigration arrests or whatever we want to call them. So I think Trump was right to provide federal support because my sense was Newsom and Bass, yes, they kind of condemned the violence, but it was a little like, well, there's a little bit of violence, not a big deal. Then it kind of spun out of control. And I think Trump wanted to send the message, no, 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 no. To your point, Emma Jo, we can't have a repeat of what happened during the social justice unrest. Other blue cities we're probably about to go into. We can't have any sort of like some violence is okay, because where does that line end? I think where the Democratic Party kind of, their response is all over the place right now. I mean, we have, we're protesting that Trump took over the National Guard. Some in our party don't think there ought to be any immigration crackdown. They've been very vocal about that. They see no problem. Some don't like ICE at all. Some members of Congress this week are talking about trying to abolish ICE again. I think the problem is, Nina, what you said at the end is where I wish as a party we could get to, which is the real conversation is, what do you do with the 14 to 20 million who are here legally, pay taxes? They're not bad hombres. They're in the community. Republicans in Congress have started going to the White House saying, hey, don't come into our community and disturb our businesses. Trump clearly heard it today and said, we're not going to deport like farm workers, right? Like, okay, what about, hotel workers? What about, like, you go on down the line. There's a story in Missouri this week, super conservative area, a waitress at a restaurant for 20 years who greeted everybody who came into the restaurant was arrested. And the community of rock solid Republicans freaked out. Release her, release her. That is a debate that I think we would win, because we would be seen as pragmatic and Trump as extreme.
But Dan, is that because she's one of the good ones?
Yes.
I mean, do you believe that Governor Newsom, and I'm no fan. I mean, listen, you guys, when you guys hear me saying anything relatively nice about the Democrats, have me examined, because I will fight them Democrats, them neoliberals especially. But Dan, do you believe that Governor Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass wanted violence to occur in their state and in their cities?
No, I don't. But I think that they were hesitant to come in full throttle and protect ICE because the community would see them as helping ICE. And
should the president have called, maybe made a call to the governor, even if they ended up disagreeing?
Well, Nina, he did call the governor, and the governor then denied it.
Before he had already had his mind made up, though.
Well, look, Nina, I do agree with you. I think where you're going, which is Trump was sending a signal, right? He was flexing on everyone to say,
that's my own.
Nobody think about harming ICE. And in that regard, whether it's ICE or any federal official, I think you cannot touch them. You cannot stop, impede what they're doing, damage property. Like,
no,
I
you
get
can't do
what
that.
he's doing,
Yeah.
but you're right. I don't think they were like, yeah, let the city burn.
Okay, Robbie, jump in here. Where do civil liberties extend to? When do they end? And also, we're going to bring in Young Kim. So prepare your thoughts, Young Kim. You're coming in right away. We got a lot of hands up. All right, Robbie.
Yeah, look, I mean, in terms of what's going on, most people are going to agree that you absolutely have the right to protest and should protest causes you feel strongly about, and you don't have the right to set cars on fire or smash windows or be violent.
Absolutely.
And it can also be the case, by the way, that the optics of this are good for both sides to the extent that both sides have different constituents and different bases. And Trump's base wants to see him is happy when there is not happy that rioting is occurring, but feels more motivated in a pro-Trump direction for Trump to do things about rioting. So it's good that that's happening for them. And then Democrats want the base. They want their elected representatives to stand up to Trump. They want horrific overreach on the part of the administration so they can do their thing. And both sides are happy with that. We're not talking about the 30,000 persuadable voters in Pennsylvania and Michigan or whatever who decide our elections. I don't know how they feel about it. We could go talk to each and one of them individually, but probably for everyone else, this is good for both parties because they just have different models by which they succeed.
Robbie, what did you mean by
Robbie, I don't think it's good for the party.
On the National Guard?
I mean, I am a supporter of states' rights, honestly. I would leave the federal government out of almost all state issues. I mean, I think it's a bit rich of people like Whoopi Goldberg, for instance, brought up states' rights on The View the other day saying, oh yeah, what about states' rights? They can't send in the feds. I'm like, you would never say that about any other issue, that the state can do whatever it wants if it's contrary to federal civil rights law or something like that. I am someone who generally wants to give the federal government out. Now, when there's when they're setting those poor little cars that get summoned there, the Waymos. I was almost moved to tears by these sweet little beautiful devices being burned by these anti-civilizational nut jobs. So maybe at that point you do need the National Guard. I did this because
Okay,
I
that
think
makes
it was
For
a
the
little early to
Waymos,
deploy them.
that's
I
when
see
we're
where you're
gonna
coming from.
send in the army.
I'm
Okay,
sad
young,
about this
let's
whole
have young
thing.
Kim join the conversation.
Wait, Nina, why are you sad?
Yeah, I'm sad about this whole thing because I just we always we are being programmed as Americans to see everything through the lens of who's Democrat, who's Republican, which side is winning and which side is not. We're losing. We are losing when we have devolved to this. This is a loss for everybody. So I would just hope, that we could look at this not in terms of which party is going to gain the best advantage. This is not good for any community. This is not good for the United States of America. This is not good for any of us right now.
Young Kim, what's on your mind? Tell us where you are and what you're thinking about.
So I'm from New York. I come from the home of Horace Greeley, Chappaqua.
Ah,
Right. And that's where he made his farm after I guess he started one of the New York newspapers the way when he was an abolitionist back in the days. But I came into the conversation because you guys are comparing the Black Lives Matter, and I was thinking even further back with the Rodney King, all that riot happened that occurred in L.A. And now all these other occurs, and the simplest thing I can think of that's easiest to grab is a flag versus a body, right? There's a flag versus a body. So if I had to just do a quick comparison, the current riots, it feels more anemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was my short. Even though I read the newspaper and it says it's spreading, it may be. It doesn't. I'm not seeing it, at least from my cursory view of it. It feels much more anemic, and it lacks that body, and maybe that. Unfortunately, that sense of having a dead body, right, provides some severity or gravity to this whole endeavor. And the fact that it's a flag, not just an American flag, but a Mexican flag at that, right? That just reduces the gravity of what's going on right now. So that was just my input. And the thing I wanted to mention is this continual. I'm making up a list of all these phrases that loses meaning, right? It used to be over, mostly peaceful, right? Right. And now it's like overwhelmingly peaceful, right? And it goes down the list. And the other phrase I keep on hearing right now is manufactured crisis. I'm like, what does that mean? Right? They're always manufactured somehow, right? There's always a crisis that both parties are trying to take advantage of it. I get it. But that's another phrase that it just loses its meaning, right? And what happens is then when the media says and repeats these phrases over and over again, right? The distrust of the media goes further and further down, right? The other topic is like sharp as a tack, right? I kept on repeating over and over again. And I was like, what is going on, right? Just a comment.
Well,
about
thank you.
the
Thank
media
you very
and what's
much.
going on.
Thank you, Young
Yeah.
Kim. So Young, I'm going to let you go. Emma Jo, I want you to speak to the question of the flags. Let's debate that, like the role the flags played. We're going to let Young Kim go. We're going to bring in Ellen Douglas while Emma Jo talks about the flags, and we can all talk about that topic. What did it mean to you? And I think to what did it signify? The role that the Mexican flags played at these protests, do you think it was significant, or is that just protected speech and we shouldn't even be focusing on that?
I don't know that he meant flags, like literally the image of the Mexican flag that I know you're talking about. Well, the way I interpreted what he said was George Floyd and Rodney King were about like human beings, and that is a much more compelling thing to go
Yes,
out
I know, but I
and
am
express
interested in the
yourself
flag.
about than
Yeah.
like a national
Yes, I
political
know.
issue?
I'm moving a little bit in that direction because I am interested in this
Okay,
question
so I
of
was
the
like, I don't
flag.
understand that
Because I
exactly, but
think it was to some people, the flag, the Mexican flag element of these protests was very significant. And to other people, it was like, no, this is just their heritage, right? So the right, the Trump side was trying to cast that as like, this is like a foreign invasion and they are flying the flag that they are loyal
Well,
to.
okay, no, sorry,
Whereas
Patcha.
on the
You're moving me, you're distracting me from the point that I had when I was listening to him. So I want to interrupt you just because I'm kind of following, but it's making me, it's screwing me up on what I want to say. So let me just, because I understood, I think I understood what he said, and it folds into exactly what I think the point of this is, and the larger point here, which is um I think that the country is split on, and Nina, I hope you know this, like I do not have any issue with equal civil rights. Obviously, of course, I shouldn't have to say that. I think Black Lives Matter was much more of like a left-wing political movement than it was necessarily about like race relations per se. But this is one of those things where there is so really little support for legal immigration. And we've talked about this on so many shows, and we've talked about this in conversations amongst us. Like people care about like their situation, they care about their country, they care about their fellow citizens, and illegal immigrants just aren't really ranking right now in terms of people's concerns, which I agree that these protests are more anemic. It's also possible that they're being, obviously broken up, but I also think that there isn't as much fervor for this issue necessarily than there would be about probably any other issue, including Black Lives Matter for sure. And like the Mexican flag is really a symbol of that. It's like, listen, people with Mexican heritage surely care about Mexico, and they have every right to, and people have every right to raise a Mexican flag if they want to or whatever. I just think that there isn't much concern for Mexico right now. And people who are trying to represent Mexico or Mexican interests or interests of foreign nationals inside the United States aren't gonna get the fire and desire from the masses, I think, that they're looking for here. And Democrats throwing themselves at this issue. I'm sorry, Nina, you were so right on the point that you made. We shouldn't be doing this, but I just can't help myself because we're analyzing politics. Democrats throwing themselves at this is such bad brand management for them. It's like they can't help themselves. This is Trump's most popular issue is immigration. And his immigration stance on mass deportations, and yes, that includes people who haven't committed other crimes other than entering the country illegally, that includes them. And so I just think this is just such a loser for the people who are opposing Trump on this. And I think this is such a loser for the people who are really advocating that we need to stop ICE raids. Come on.
Okay, so we want to get to the Democrats' brand in the next block on Newsom. Let's bring in Ellen. Thank you for joining us. Tell us where you're at, and what's on your mind, and then we'll get to the Democrats' brand problem.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm usually in Scottsdale, Arizona, but right now I'm in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Nice.
Yes, and so I have a silly question that kind of goes off of something that you were saying, Nina, just before, is that why isn't Congress standing up and putting together real legislation to either address the issue of what do we do with the workers that are here that provide such a service and they're so valuable to our community? Why isn't Congress coming together to do something to create visas or whatever it would be? And why is it that the people are just so hyper focused on, the violence and the cars were burning and this and that versus the people demanding Congress to create the legislation to support the worker in the restaurant, in the hotel that I'm staying at right now, in our farms? Why is that not happening? And let me add to it and continue my rant. Why does it seem with every single issue we get hyper focused on something over here? Biden is, he's losing his mind, whatever. Why didn't the people of Congress express their concerns and go to whoever? The deficit is terrible. Why are we all focused about, our programs being cut versus like, oh, let's actually make changes? So that is my rant.
Nina.
Wow, that's so deep and so true.
Yeah, Ellen, I'm feeling you. I mean, my problem with the way you're right, you asking a very good question, the why. But when the president or anybody puts a qualifier on whose life is more valuable in a sense, to have the president of the United States of America say, I'm gonna get rid of all illegal immigrants. I mean, Emma Joe is right. If somebody here illegally, they have already, by definition, broken the law. This is a failure, though, of many presidents and many Congresses.
Mhm.
How we handle it, though, as a country, is where my contention is. Now, I have no problem with the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst. Got that? Check mark. How we handle it, though, as a country matters to me. Now, when the president of the United States of America said, "Oh, wait a minute, though," but if they farm workers and they hotel workers, even if they're illegal, it's all right. So it's
Mhm.
okay for President Donald J. Trump to be all over the place, but then Democrats got to be indicted, of which I am no champion of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party right now is an epic fail. And I would prefer that they would be fighting this president and the Republican Congress over millions of people who are about to lose their SNAP benefits,
Mhm.
over the millions of people who have diabetes, who cannot afford their insulin, so they got to put it on credit cards, or the
Mhm.
millions of people who are about to be cut off Medicaid. See, that's what I want to see the Democrats fight over, but they're not doing that because they don't have the capacity. Both parties have been co-opted by corporate interests. Now, to my dear sister Emma Joe. Emma Joe, I love you, baby. I mean that. You and I, we gonna go on tour. We're gonna do a whole lot of dancing together. But I got to help you understand this. When you say that the Black Lives Matter movement was some left wing action, you minimize how Black Americans felt to see, and hopefully other Americans felt, to see George Floyd lynched in the 21st century, and a bubbling up of Black people who are saying, we tired of this. I just wrote an article on my Substack about this whole immigration thing, about it, basically saying, because now Black people are hearing, well, you guys are next. Why aren't you standing up? You're next. No, we ain't next. We were first. We were written out of the founding documents. We were Jim and Jane Crow. We were lynched. We were sharecropped. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was one of the most hated men. I know for us right now in the 21st century, that's mind blowing. But two-way family, I want you to understand this. He was one of the most hated men of his time. We love him now, but he was hated at the time. And why was he hated in his contemporaries? Because he was fighting for justice and humanity for Black Americans who are descendants of chattel slavery. So, Emma Joe, my point is this. Black Lives Matter movement might not have been as pretty and rosy as some people might have liked it to be, but that movement bubbled up from Black people who are sick and tired of being relegated to second-class citizenship in the country that we built.
Yeah, but Nina,
Can I
that's
just
why
can I just
I
respond to
find
that
this
just for
whole thing, that's exactly why I find this whole like white knighting for illegal immigrants so
yeah.
not just frustrating, but like an
Okay,
absolute betrayal of the civil rights movement.
but I
Because why are we so out there exercised on behalf of non-citizens when our own citizens still feel like they are not getting equal access to opportunities? Like to me, I'm totally with you. But to me, that seems like that's why I find that this whole immigration debate is so relevant and why I think the Democrats are totally focused on, like you said, on the wrong thing. Okay, I have to get
but
us into the next block. Yeah, Robbie, very quickly, Robbie, and then we'll go
I
into the next
disagree
block.
with many
I think
things
you're
just said.
acting like because they're not like we. If people who want to magically press a button and have the millions of people who are in the country illegally suddenly disappear are just not living in the real world. That cannot happen. What Stephen Miller is trying to do, he screamed at ICE officials who are trying to take dangerous, violent criminals off the street. And Stephen Miller, a lunatic, screams at these people and says, how dare you prioritize violent immigrants? I want you in Home Depot parking lots harassing people who happen to look Hispanic. I think that's insane. I don't want my government doing that. I want them deporting violent gang members. I don't want them going door to, I mean, I don't want to be dramatic about it like it's fascism or something, but I don't
It's
want to be asked to
fascism.
show my papers. I'm not doing anything wrong. I don't want anyone else. I don't want my friends, family members, neighbors. I want the violent immigrants gone. And I don't care what the polling says, because then you got to ask follow-up questions like, okay, are you willing to carry an ID with you everywhere you go? Do you want to have military checkpoints on every street? This is insane. It's insane to me. What Stephen Miller wants to do is insane.
I think we know
That's
who
it. I'm
Terry
with you.
Moran's first
I'm with
guest
you,
is.
Robbie. I'm with you.
All right, let's get to the next block, which is about the Democrats, Gavin Newsom 2028. At least one person has seen this moment as a real opportunity for his career, which is California Governor Gavin Newsom, who has seized on the protest to cast himself as the face of the hashtag Resistance 2.0. Newsom spent the first 100 days of Trump's second term trying to portray himself as a centrist, and yet all week he's been sort of puffing himself up as Trump's big foe, defender of the seamstresses and the dishwashers and the day laborers that Robbie would rather die than see deported. He recorded a speech that many are seeing as a soft launch of his 2028 presidential bid. Let's look at a few clips from that. Element number 4, please, Sam.
On Saturday morning, when federal agents jumped out of an unmarked van near a Home Depot parking lot, they began grabbing people, a deliberate targeting of a heavily Latino suburb. A similar scene played out when a clothing company was raided downtown. Donald Trump, without consulting California law enforcement leaders, commandeered 2,000 of our state's National Guard members to deploy on our streets, illegally and for no reason. This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation. Trump and his loyalists, they thrive on division because it allows them to take more power and exert even more control. Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived. What Donald Trump wants most is your fealty, your silence to be complicit in this moment. Do not give in to him.
Okay, so by a show of hands, who thinks that Newsom is positioning himself for 2028? Raise your hand if you think he's positioning himself for 2028. Okay, who thinks he's better situated today for 2028 than he was a week ago? Who thinks he's better
Put up 2
situated
hands.
today?
Yeah.
Okay, and then one last question. Who won the week, Newsom or Trump? Who thinks Newsom won the week? Who thinks Trump won the week? Trump won the week. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's get into it a little bit. Dan, where do you see this going for Newsom? You think that he's better positioned now, and yet you don't think that he's been handling it well. So is it sort of like he's now the presumptive, and yet that's a bad thing? Talk us through how you see this moment.
Oh, I mean, I think there's the substance and there's the politics of it, right? The substance, I think California is going to lose in court. I don't really know what it is he's advocating for, right? Is it that, as you say, all these immigrants should not be rounded up? Is it states' rights that he overtook the National Guard and we had everything under control? Like, he hasn't defined really what it is. His one main message has been Trump's authoritative, but that's a losing message. At least it has been in Trump's, history. Where I think he's played this well politically is the party has been itching for somebody to fight and not back down against Trump. I may think it's a little bit of a suicide mission what he's fighting on, but he is fighting, and he has actually begun to show some nimbleness in terms of he's mocking his mental acuity, the fact that he tripped on the steps, the fact that he's forgetting when he called them. Like, these are the tricks that Trump does to other people to try to belittle them. I think we would all agree.
Can I just play that, Dan, before you finish, and
Yeah.
I'll let you respond to that. Can we play element 6? This is Newsom saying that Trump has lost it.
He's lost it. He hasn't lost a step. And I saw him trip on the steps today. I mean, this is serious. He is not the same person that I dealt with just 4 years ago. And he's incapable now of even a train of thought. He's making things up, and he's putting people's lives at risk. And he's got a band of people that are complicit in this. And that's what's so damn alarming.
Is
Sounds
that
like he's
not,
talking
is
about
that,
Joe Biden.
I
that,
can,
is
I'm
that,
right, Robbie. That's what I'm thinking, the same thing. Like, which president is he talking about?
That's right.
This is absolutely ridiculous. And Governor Gavin Newsom is showing how he is not going to be a serious contender in
Well,
2028.
here's the only thing though.
Oh my God.
If I were a Democrat and I were running in a primary in a blue area,
Oh,
the
Jesus.
emails coming out right now with his name are all over the place, right? We're all talking about Gavin Newsom fighting Trump. Gavin, again, general election, huge problem. Again, he has no substantive kind of winning argument. But on the politics, even people who don't like him kind of in the political world are grudgingly saying the guy is like, he's not backing down. He is all in. And I think for him, Newsom was not a top tier candidate before this. He is now in the top tier because someone's going to be the progressive candidate.
Can I ask you a question?
wait,
Can I ask you a
one
question
second,
from the audience?
one second. Guys, the two-way godfather is here, Mark
Everyone come at me.
Halperin, with his hand raised.
Oh boy.
We're going to get him in. Mark, tell us where you are and what's on your mind.
First time?
I'm in Gotham City. I love this show. I've seen every episode, and I can't say enough about how you're bringing America together. So thank you for that. I just want to say, if you're all maybe sharing with Elon, those of you who think this is helping Gavin Newsom, it might be. But I just want to make one point. He's got young kids. He's got a wife who's skeptical about his running for president. And if I were a normal person going through what he's going through now, I would take this as a data point to say, I don't want anything to do with running for national office. I just think there's too much cynicism attached to him as like a robot cyborg taking in data saying, well, there are a lot of Google searches for my name, so of course I'm going to run. I just think he's got a relatively normal family. And this experience, to me, is just horrible because he's doing an okay job, I think, on just like the technical merits, the video, and some of the stuff. But this is like the fires. This is another 24/7. And I think his family's now seen 2 24/7s, not counting COVID. I just can't believe they'd want any part of it. Thank you. Big fan. Enjoy the show.
Thank you, Mark. And we've got Sam here as well. Sam?
Wait, can I just say something?
By the way,
Go ahead, Emma Jo.
Mark podcasting, you love Newsom. You should watch.
You were saying like everybody is like glomming on, like everybody is excited, Newsom.
No.
But then you also said like you mentioned that but there's no like real like policies or like reasons.
Yeah, just fighting Trump. That's it.
We lost twice.
All right,
by
Sam.
that.
Sam,
I agree.
Sam, where are you?
By
Tell
the
us
way,
where you
every
are and
other
what's on your mind.
2028er is silent and running away from him. So like that sink in right there.
That is true.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
Sam.
Yes, I'm in Texas. I am a longtime fan of the morning meeting. I have been a fan of Rising since 2019. So Nina, Batya, Robbie, it's phenomenal to speak to all of you, and nice to meet you, Emma. And Dan, I love you.
Thank you, Sam.
So about Gavin Newsom, I'm going to say I rolled my eyes so hard listening to him because it sounds, you could feel the dirty, nasty politician. However, as I scroll through Facebook, all of my aunts in their 50s and 60s are eating it up. There is a constituency for it. There really is. So I wouldn't quite dismiss him fully. So that's kind of what I want to say about Gavin. Robbie, I totally appreciate you standing up for the Elon Musk constituents. I have been a fan, a shareholder, an employee of Tesla since in 2013, 14, and 15.
Wow. Kept that
and
stock.
for all the things that people say about Elon Musk today, for anyone that's ever built any kind of business or endeavor and found some level of success, it is so easy for people to tear you down as an overnight success when things are going really well. But if you have the chance to there's a couple biographies about him, and a bunch of YouTube content about Tesla in the early days. and about EVs in the early days. His mission has never changed. He is very consistent. And I know, Dan, we've talked about this before, the stuff about all of the contracts and Elon's trying to save his contracts. He's spoken over and over again about how he doesn't care about the EV tax credits because Tesla, the Tesla Model Y was the best selling car in 2023, 2024 in the world, even before the tax credit. So yes, it helps, but it really helps other traditional non-EV manufacturers to bring their EVs on. So I just wanted to kind of speak to that. And my main point, I'm sorry, I'll end quickly here, but the thing that I had a question about is, Nina, I could sense the disappointment in where the conversation was going when it came to the immigration issue. I have my own position on it. It'll take too long to get into, but I want to figure out, I think the person that can win the day truly from a political standpoint, whether it's the House and Senate, someone needs to come up with an actual solution. Because Trump, for all the things he is malleable. And he is the type of person that if a good idea comes around, whether it's no matter which way it comes from, there is a possibility that he will listen. Clearly, he's shifted his views on what's happening with the immigrants that work out on the farms and in hotels and in restaurants. So someone just needs to come up with a true solution. Hey, and I'll give you an example. Every illegal immigrant that's come into the United States within the past 4 years gets sent back home. Anyone that has committed other crimes gets sent back home, and then some sort of amnesty for everyone else or a path for everyone else. I'm an immigrant myself, and I can tell you, as an immigrant, getting into this country is not easy. People give everything, risk their lives, as we all know, but they give everything from all parts of the world to come to this country. And I think there should be a process. And the first Democrat to stand up and come up with a plan that makes at least some sort of sense, I think will win over a lot of independents.
Robbie.
Yeah, those are great sentiments that I really agree with. One plan that I have heard floated, and there's probably a lot of people participating in this chat who won't love this idea, but my friend Daniel DiMartino, who's a scholar at the Manhattan Institute, I think he has a plan for people who are illegally entered the country who are here, would basically pay their way to a form of citizenship or amnesty, or you wouldn't be removed from the country. It would be a lot of money to have to pay, like, I don't know, $30,000, $50,000 or something, but that would be the best way to handle it.
Sam, I think that's that's the $1 million issue, which is we have not presented a credible alternative to try to be seen as a pragmatic party. And the first problem, in my opinion, and Nina, I know you jump in here, is a lot of our party does not want to even admit there is a problem that has to be solved. So I think, like, if we said the border should be closed, it should not be that you can kind of walk across it or be smuggled easily across it. So we're going to put X amount of money to really seal that border off. Now, the average person's like, okay, now I'm going to keep listening. And if you're a really bad hombre who's been convicted of, criminal cases either at home or here, you need to be deported, right? Now you have my attention because you passed the kind of like common sense test. Now it is, okay, if you've been here for just a few years, what do we do? You've been here for 30 years? Like, really? We're going to pull these people out of society? Like, it is 90% of those, the reason we can't deport them, you don't know who they are. They don't have an A on their head that says immigrant. So you're like, boy, Bob's been here for 30 years. I see his grandkids. His kid was a star at the football team. Wife works at this place. He's illegal. It's like when people found out people were gay. Bob's gay? Like, what are you talking about? Okay, you know what? I'm okay with gay people. So we don't even get there because half the party's like, what are you talking about? We should get rid of ICE. There's no problem.
Yeah, but Dan, there's a very obvious reason why the Democrats became the lax on immigration party. And
They hate Trump.
No, it's because their base are the consumers of low wage labor.
Oh, I totally disagree about that.
Donald Trump won because the working class felt abandoned by Democrats who for 100 years were the hawkish on immigration policy because they understood the basic and obvious truth that limiting the supply of labor raises the wages of the working class. This was Bernie Sanders' position until 2015. It was the National Union's position until 1990 that you have the only way to protect the labor of the working class is to limit the supply of labor. It's like the most obvious thing. And the Democrats did a 180 on that, including Senator Sanders, because their base are now the rich, educated people who are the employers and who would much rather hire a nanny who's illegal for $40,000 a year than have to do what my grandmother did, which is pay her entire salary to the woman who was watching her children. Because my grandmother was a teacher and she made roughly what would have been acceptable for her cleaning lady to make. Like that's a normal society where the labor of the working class is respected and not the expectation that if you have a college degree, you should be making 200% more than the person whose labor you rely on to be able to go to work.
But you can always, what is the limiting principle with that? You can always have a government policy that artificially constricts smaller and smaller the supply of some resource or of labor.
It is the law. It is the limiting principle is the law. It is the border of this nation and people who did not break our law in order to get here.
Well, that's not true. Like we were founded on cheap labor coming to this country to find a better life. That is how we were founded.
That ended in the 1920s.
We were founded by Europeans who sought a better life.
Well,
but part
Sam, let's bring in Sam. Sam, go ahead.
Can I say to Butch's point real quick?
Sam.
If there is anyone that understands the idea of filtering the amount of additional labor that comes into the United States, it is immigrants that are outside of the country, because we understand that I have to go in order to get to the United States. I have to set an appointment with the consulate, go do an appointment. I have to qualify for whatever it is that I'm going to do there, because I understand that I have to offer something to the United States that they can't provide for themselves within the country. So immigrants or prospective immigrants that are outside of the country understand that way more than Americans do, which is kind of crazy because a lot of folks will come in, and when they get the chance to come in, they take advantage. But we fully understand. We fully understand that principle.
Absolutely.
Also
more than some immigrants, I would say. Sam, thank you so much. Emma Jo, go ahead and let's bring in Ram in the meantime. Ram.
I was going to say, Sam is a very thoughtful person, and I think he takes it for granted how like he thinks, because I'm not speaking about, I don't think that it's not universal among immigrants. I think it's not universal among lawmakers in this country, and this thought that you just shared is too thoughtful for where this conversation is or really has ever been. You just talked about catering to the needs of the country. I haven't heard that in any national debate by any official lawmakers. I hear a lot about what our values are, supposedly. I hear a lot about what about the people we already know and already like. I hear about, well, what's really so wrong about crossing the border, actually. I hear a lot about emotional appeals. I don't hear a lot about the needs of the economy, which is something that only really Trump has brought up, and the strain on the working class, which only really Trump has brought up. And Bachi already went through this, and I don't need to go through it again because I 100% agree and wouldn't put it any better. But just to say, you said that, and that was a throwaway line to you, and I'm like, wow, I actually wish that we again, and there was another caller who actually talked about this too. We do not have any laws that have any spirit to that effect at all. We do not have laws that think about what the needs of our economy are. And I wish we did. It's a very deep point, and nobody really thinks of it as much as you did.
Ram, thank you for joining us. Tell us where you are and what's on your mind.
Thank you, Batya. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and I've been a huge fan of the morning meeting and the 6 p.m. show that Mark has, and this is a great forum. Just from a political affiliation perspective, I am more of a Dan Democrat, but I started out as a Dan Democrat, but in fact, I campaigned for Obama. I worked for his team, spent months working on his first campaign, but where the Democratic Party has gone now, the whole politics of identity has completely threw me off, and I think Democrats would do well to get off that. But that's a topic for a different discussion. And by the way, when I was in LA as a grad student at USC, there was the Rodney King riots at that point. So, like, I was privy to the South Central LA, which is where the campus was, and the damage done during those riots were far greater than what is happening right now. Anyway, my question is, we all know that President Obama deported probably more undocumented migrants than Trump has done in his first term and in his second term.
Yeah.
So, firstly, how did they do it? We don't hear anything about any of the process violations they may have done. I'm sure there were process violations. It has to be when you're deporting so many people. So how did they do it, in the sense that, did they follow a strategy of deporting only the criminals, or did they, I mean, what kind of recipe did they follow? And why wasn't there such a large hue and cry about it? So is it just Trump derangement syndrome at this point? I mean, so I'm just confused by the response to the two deportation efforts.
Well, one thing I can tell you is there was a lot of consternation in the Latino community and the Latino advisors to his campaign. They spent a big part of 2011 getting ready for 2012, trying to like calm them down and keep them in the tent, because they were so aggressive deporting people pretty indiscriminately that they were very worried that they were going to have a political problem on their hands. And so they had to try to massage it to say, we're better than he would be. Romney and Ryan would be a lot worse for the community. But you're right. They were very aggressive, and they told certain communities, we are very aggressive, right? It was how they kind of tried to present the moderate, Obama, is that they were very tough on it.
Nina?
Ram, I would say that anybody that really cares about immigration reform, and to Sam's point about presenting something to President Trump, so I'm going to address both of you. I think at times President Trump is like a hockey puck to me. He's going to move one way or the other. We just don't know which way a lot of times. So to your point, right, the puck is going to move. The president probably could be moved, but the immigration crisis that we face does not just rest at the feet of this current president. It was President Biden, it was President Obama, President Clinton, all the presidents before now, and all the Congresses who refused to have the courage to deal with the immigration, reform it in a humane way, and let's stick to the rules. Secure the border, check, let's do that. Make sure that the worst of the worst, check. Now, Robbie made a very important point. Anybody that thinks that these millions of immigrants are just somehow going to be shipped off somewhere, they've lost their mind. Now, I don't believe that people should have to pay in that way, because now it's going to be a classes issue. But Ram, to answer your question directly, any person who calls themselves a Democrat, who's more outraged about President Donald J. Trump than they were about President Obama and President Biden, they're a hypocrite. Now, I don't like the way that President Trump is doing this. I think he's putting fire on gasoline, or gasoline on the fire. Hell, both ways. He's doing it both ways. However, we have an immigration crisis in this country, and it must be reformed. Charity starts at home and spreads abroad. So you can't have Americans with complex needs and then only deal with other people outside of the country. You got to be able to do both. And when people are suffering, they want to make sure that you're going to deal with them first. But politically, any Democrat, and that's why Governor Gavin Newsom is a joke. And what people are, I'm calling him a rock star now. He won't be one 6-7 months from now, because he don't have any conviction. He just flaps in the wind. Any Democrat that's more upset with President Donald J. Trump, except for the way he's doing it, they're a hypocrite.
Ram, thank you
right.
so
They
much.
didn't have that smoke for President Biden, Obama.
Thank you.
They didn't.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie and Emma Jo. Let's have some final quick thoughts, and then we'll close it out. Robbie, you go first.
I want to share a story, the Candlemaker's Petition to the Sun. I don't know if you've heard this one. This is from the economist Frederick Bastiat, one of my favorite thinkers from the early 19th century. I believe somewhere in the 19th century. He was a libertarian thinker, early libertarian thinker, said, what if the candle makers said a petition to the government to blot out the sun, which unfairly competes with the candle makers? They'd sell a whole lot more candles if they didn't have to compete with the light of the sun. So what if the government was motivated to get more votes from candle makers, blot out that sun to sell more candles? It shows the limits, I would argue, of that kind of thinking to just protect specific laborers in a specific industry at all costs leads you to some really counterproductive for our society economic thinking. That's
Robbie,
all.
how long have you been waiting to say that to me?
Years, Batya, years.
Go ahead, Robbie. Go
Emma
ahead.
Jo, final thoughts.
Okay, I can't say I'm familiar with that piece from Bastiat, but
You're gonna quote the philosopher Steve Bannon?
I'm gonna try. Yeah, we're in the fourth turning, Robbie. No. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that specific Bastiat, but based just on your description from right now, the candle makers are the ones who who is mediating between the candle maker and the sun?
No, they're asking the government. The candle makers want the government to blot out the sun.
It is the government. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So they're
Yeah.
appealing to the government, the candle makers, and the sun. The thing is, the government is accountable to the candle makers. So if the candle makers want the government to block the sun, or if that would serve the candle makers who the government serves, then maybe we should think about closing the blinds.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us and for engaging. If you missed the beginning of the show, you can find it on X. You can find it on YouTube. Please join us again next week, Thursday at 4 p.m. Thank you again for the lovely chat and the lovely comments. We love it and we're competitive about it. So keep it going and we will see you here next week. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you.